You know something, folks, I'd like to tell you I'm not the kind of guy to kick a bad idea when it's down, but I am. I like it. It's fun. And it's also my job. So, reporting in the British Telegraph, Christopher Booker lands another body blow against AGW, that's anthropogenic global warming, that's man-made global warming. Turns out that for 30 years now, what he correctly describes as one of the most accurate temperature data sets in the world, those recorded by the U.S. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, that's NOAA, turns out that that data has been, shall we say, fudged. Where actual recorded temperatures did not show warming, but computer models did, NOAA scare quotes scientists, on square quotes, NOAA scientists, replaced the actual temperatures with the ones predicted by the computer models. Now, we've covered this subject before, obviously, but I have a different set of questions onto whether or not global warming is real. So let's bring in, sitting in for the probably inebriated Steve Green, Mr. Steve Cruiser, ladies and gentlemen, and joining us at last from Texas, where, as you can see, the brightness of the sun is causing him incredible dermatological distress. He's hot, he's bright, he's overlit, his head may swell, may get smaller. Who knows? Atmospheric pressure is not quite the same over there. Scott Ott is with us. We're going to get him indoor plumbing next week and then the internet connection after that. So, Scott, good to have you back. Gentlemen, I don't really want to get into whether or not this global warming thing is real. I want to assume that there's now enough evidence of fraud in virtually every research center and data set to assume that it is not real. And then I want to get on to the real questions. So, Mr. Cruiser, assuming that this is, in fact, the fraud of the century, or at least the second biggest fraud of the century, you'd have to assume that, like the progressives, like Obama's Democrats, pretty much all of Western Europe and all of the rest of those weak-minded individuals out there desperately, Steve, want this global warming thing to be true. And if they can't get the evidence, they'll manufacture the evidence. Why do you think that the left has such a vested interest in this global warming phenomenon?
Well, it's become their religion. First of all, that's the main reason. They've largely abandoned any kind of religious life. And I'm not getting too preachy on this, but if you look at the zeal with which they approach preaching the global warming misinformation or disinformation even, you see that it has become a religious thing. And in one of the most bitterly expensive ironies for American industry and the economy in the last few years is that the people at the top are using this religious fervor to drive policy, which is costing us a fortune. It's crippled energy. And, when California had its energy crisis a few years ago, they were all trying to blame Enron. It also had to do with the fact that because of regulations, California, this largest, most populous state in the union, hadn't produced any new energy plants in forever. So they're using it to drive policy. It's their religion. So they desperately need people to believe this, and sadly, they're saying that they're the party of science, and what it is purely fantastical religious belief in non-data now. Most of the things that they've been pinning all of this on for years have been proven to be made up, and they've been so brilliant at dominating the narrative about this that they've made people true believers. That's what it is. We're dealing with this weird, dangerously expensive religious cult.
That's pretty much exactly right. Now, Scotty, here's something that's actually connected to the global warming thing. It's another paradox you might help me to understand. Natural gas, as it turns out, is the cleanest burning fossil fuel in the world in terms of the carbon that these leftists claim is causing this problem that doesn't exist. Yet natural gas development, which basically puts under the feet of us here in America more energy reserves than in the entire Middle East, is being forcefully and desperately opposed because of fracking. You know, Scotty, it's actually enough to make you think that the left just wants to shut down economic growth.
Well, it's more than that. It's not to just shut down economic growth. It's because economic growth comes from free people. Economic growth comes from a system that they derisively called capitalism, and which the capitalists then embraced and said, yeah, you got that right. The foundation of this whole argument from the left is that individuals should not be allowed to make decisions with resources that they have ownership of in order to advance their own pursuit of happiness. And the whole global warming scheme works very well for them if it can be proven to be true. If science were science in this realm, there would now be dozens, hundreds, perhaps thousands of scientists in the world desperately trying to falsify the theory of anthropogenic global warming. Because that's what scientists are supposed to do. They're supposed to be skeptics, and they say, okay, I've got a theory, now let me prove that it's not true. and let me eliminate every other possibility before realizing that maybe it is true. And they're not taking that approach. It seems like science has turned into public relations, which is, let's prove to people that what we've told them is correct. It's the exact reverse of science, and I'm hoping a new generation of scientists will rise up and start doing science again.
That's exactly right. It's social engineering. How can they claim it's science if, as scientists, they say, well, the computer model says one thing and the atmosphere says something else, so obviously the atmosphere is wrong. You know, my friends, there are some things that I am sure of, there are some things I'm very sure of, and some things that I believe, but which I'm a little concerned about because I don't like to get things wrong, especially not the important ones. Over a decade now, I've watched this anthropogenic global warming move ever towards me being more and more quite sure that there's nothing to it. Now, if history does indeed prove that to be the case, then someday in the distant future, when a true history of our time can be written by our insect overlords, this global warming phenomenon will be shown to have been the second greatest hoax of the century, maybe even in all of history. Now, as many have already said, all you have to do is wonder where all the communists went after the fall of the Soviet Union. They became watermelons. They're green on the outside and they're red on the inside. And they've been using environmental concerns to get us to willingly shut down or at least slow down what they could never have done on their own, namely that engine of capitalism and innovation, which we call the U.S. economy. And this global warming, this second greatest hoax of the century, is being led, to the degree that he leads anything, of course, by the man who is, in fact, the greatest hoax of the 21st century. That's not an assertion on my part. All you have to do is look who raised him, look at what he reads, look at who he admires, and look at what he does and is trying to do to prevent the prosperity and the freedom that drives this country. Honestly, if these commie greenie weenies weren't so damned incompetent, we'd all be screwed permanently right now instead of just for another 2.5 years. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle.